So not a great year for predictions, but I got a few right. Not to beat myself up too much, but we can do better. So let's try with my pro wrestling predictions for 2020 as we gaze into the future. With Brock Lesnar being in the Royal Rumble match this year, it opens up a whole range of possibilities as far as who might eliminate him or who he'll face at WrestleMania. They're probably one and the same, whoever it ends up being. It could very well be Cain Velasquez, and I would hate to see it. I'd love to see it be, as I said earlier, a star from NXT or, maybe like Drew McIntyre. I think it's his time. It's sink or swim. It's sink or swim. I don't think he wins the Rumble, but I do think, and this is my prediction here, that Drew McIntyre will win the Elimination Chamber match for the right to see who gets to wrestle Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, and he will win the WWE Championship from Lesnar in Tampa. I predicted it will be Roman Reigns winning the Men's Royal Rumble match this year to earn a shot at the Fiend Bray Wyatt and his Universal title at WrestleMania. They have held Roman out of the title picture ever since he came back last year. They have kept him out. I don't want to say they've kept him on ice, but he really has been downplayed a lot more than even I thought he would be. I don't see that lasting much longer. You know they still want to build around him as their star on that SmackDown brand. I don't think Daniel Bryan's going to get the job done at the Royal Rumble when it comes to winning the championship. So I think Roman is going to win the Rumble. I think he's going to be the man that they put up against The Fiend. He's the guy that is going to somehow find a way to beat him and to win the championship. But that will be your Royal Rumble winner and championship match at WrestleMania, is my prediction. I predict that Ronda Rousey will return to win the Women's Royal Rumble match and go on to challenge Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship one-on-one, the way it should have been this past year, at WrestleMania. And she will lose. And the next night on Raw is when Shayna Baszler attacks and starts a new program with Becky, and it's Shayna who goes on to end the year-plus reign of Becky Lynch. I predict that Edge will be a surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble match. There's been a lot of speculation about Edge. Will he? Won't he? He denies it, but then a new report comes out saying he just signed a fat new contract and it's a big enough deal that it would seem to be for more than just kind of keeping him under contract to keep him away from other companies or doing a podcast or something like that. So what's going on with Edge? Well, I think we're going to see him in the Royal Rumble. I don't see it as being a full-fledged return. I'm not even convinced he'll have a match at WrestleMania. But to come in and do some spots in the Rumble match, I think he can do it. And I think we see that at Minute Maid Park. 2 years ago, John Cena was asked, he was at a Comic-Con or something, some kind of event. And he was asked who among the crop of top NXT talent would he most like to see step into the ring with him in the future. And the choices he was given were Adam Cole, Ricochet, and the Velveteen Dream. And he chose Velveteen Dream. He had high praise for Dream. He said that he had a feeling about him and that he would like to have a match with him one day. Now, I think that day is April 5th at WrestleMania 36. I think John Cena will wrestle the Velveteen Dream. And it sucks that Dream hurt his back and he missed out on all that build to Survivor Series, of which I'm sure he would have been a big part. You know, as strong as NXT ended up getting put over there, I think he would have ended up being a big part of that. Now, maybe it would have been at the expense of a Damian Priest or somebody, but he was hurt and he wasn't able to be part of all that. He should have been. This would be as big of a way, I think, to make up for that as you could possibly come up with. It could be huge for his career. Now, I also have flashbacks to Bray Wyatt losing to John Cena at WrestleMania 30, but I think it would be different this time. Cena's just in a different place in his life. He's in a different place of his career. His career is winding down. You know, I thought about the idea of John Cena entering the Royal Rumble as he did in 2008 as a surprise and then building to him and Brock Lesnar. One last time at WrestleMania, the whole story about Cena trying to nail down title number 17 to break Ric Flair's fake record. But I just don't see them doing it yet. I'm not even convinced that Cena will have the time that they would need to really promote a championship match around him. I just don't see it. But to put over a new guy who he's on record as saying could be the guy at some point seems more realistic to me. I predict that CM Punk, despite some people still believing that he will or come back, or that his beef with Seth Rollins is all a work, that he will not wrestle at WrestleMania this year. I mean, it's ridiculous I even have to say this. It seems kind of obvious, but there are people who have convinced themselves that it's all a work. And whether it's Miz or whether it's Rollins, this is all happening for a reason. He will not wrestle, not only at WrestleMania, but I predict he will not wrestle for WWE at all in 2020. His deal is with Fox. It's not with WWE. When his deal with Fox is up, he will not be back. But he will wrestle again, somewhere at some point. And it may well be WWE, it just won't be this year. I predict that The Undertaker will wrestle his final match at the Survivor Series. 30 years after debuting on that very same event in 1990, 30 years of The Undertaker is going to be the promotion around this event. It's where he was born. It's where he will go to die, in a matter of speaking. And he will then headline the Hall of Fame class in 2021 as part of WrestleMania 37 weekend. I predict that WWE will host its second all-women's pay-per-view event this year, but it will not be Evolution 2. Instead, it will be the first ever Queen of the Ring event, with a tournament that climaxes at the pay-per-view. I predict that Jon Moxley will win the AEW Championship from Chris Jericho at their Revolution pay-per-view next month, and then drop it to Kenny Omega at their All Out event at the end of the summer. I predict that Matt Hardy will leave WWE for AEW. All signs seem to point to him leaving and going somewhere, although nothing is for sure. But I do think he will leave WWE to go to AEW when his contract expires in March. And remember, if you let your contract expire, there's no non-compete. You don't have to wait 90 days like Luke Harper, for example, is in the middle of doing right now, and most people would have to do if they let you go. If he just quietly lets his contract run out, that's it. He could show up the next day, wherever he wants. He's certainly been teasing a lot on social media about leaving. The reports are that it's not about money. He's been negotiating with WWE. Money is not the issue. It's more creative control. And what are you going to do with me? What are your plans for me going forward? The reality is this. I kind of understand both sides of the coin here. On the one hand, Matt Hardy is a lot older. He's got a lot of mileage on his body. He could barely walk straight. It's almost painful to watch him walk to the ring. He's not a spring chicken anymore. He's had a lot of injuries. And so I can understand WWE saying, listen, we're not going to put you in like a main event prime position here. We have a lot of other guys on the roster. We have more talent than we've ever had before. We have more talent than we know what to do with. We have people chomping at the bit down in Florida waiting to come up. We're not going to guarantee you some big, massive push at this point in your career. And again, I don't think they've ever looked at Matt. They've never respected him the way that they have Jeff Hardy. And no matter how many times Jeff Hardy would get into trouble or get suspended or would go away for a while, they were always more likely to do something like that with him because they saw Jeff Hardy as the star, not Matt Hardy. I don't think much has changed in that way. But I can also understand Matt's perspective. It's not as though this company ever did much with that whole woken or broken persona. They had the Halloween special on the network that was very entertaining. But character-wise on TV, they never ran with it. And I still think it had mileage. I think it could have gotten over in front of the WWE audience the way that it did the Impact audience and all the independent shows. And, it was creative enough where had you given him more creative leeway or input into the character and skits and stuff on TV, which I was hoping they would do, I think it could have worked. They never gave him a chance. And he recognizes this next contract he signs is probably going to be the last contract he ever signs. Especially if it's like a 3 or 4. I mean, WWE's been signing people to 5-year deals. So this next contract is going to be it for him. And he recognizes that. So he wants to make sure if this is the last run that he's going to have, that he makes the most of it. And if WWE can't give him certain assurances of that, then you know what he should do? He should walk. He should walk away and go somewhere else where he'll be appreciated And maybe he will have the creative input that he craves, more than money. So I think he's as good as gone. And I think he will be revealed as, as Broken Matt Hardy, to be the exalted one, leading the Dark Order in AEW. Because if they insist on pushing the Dark Order as a top faction, which clearly they do, they need somebody with a name to lead them. It can't be some unknown. I thought about Christopher Daniels. Him turning them down last week may have just been something to throw us off the scent. I just think that would be kind of a letdown. I get the whole, Daniels was once considered to be the higher power in WWE and it never happened. And here we are now, 20 years later or whatever, and he'll be the higher power for the Dark Order. But, Daniels, is he really the answer? I don't think that's a good choice. Now, Matt Hardy, they're probably the same age. I mean, I don't know who's older than the other. Actually, I think Daniels might be older. So it's not like Matt Hardy is some young up-and-comer, but I think as Broken Matt, I mean, the potential there, the entertainment value there, with all of his minions and the skits they could shoot and everything is just, I don't know. It's too good. It'd be too good to reject if that was the idea that was on the table. I predict that Martys Girl will not be revealed as the Exalted One and will not sign with AEW. And instead he will sign a new deal to stay with Ring of Honor while still being allowed to work with the NWA and make appearances on Powerrr. And in fact, we just saw Nick Aldis. I was going to talk about this in the Powerrr review, but I'll mention it now. Nick Aldis made a surprise appearance last night at the Ring of Honor show at Center Stage in Atlanta. He appeared in disguise as a police officer after the main event was over, and he went after Flip Gordon. I guess Flip Gordon had ran down to make the save. This was after the match between PCO and Roosh, where PCO won by DQ. And so he attacked Flip Gordon. I think Martys Girl came out to chase him off. They're building to an NWA championship match, possibly at the NWA pay-per-view on the 24th between Aldis and Skrull. So now, all of a sudden, NWA had previously had a working relationship with Ring of Honor, and then it stopped, and it seems like they may be working together again. And they are furthering the story between Aldis and Skrull. And I think, if Marty stays with ROH, and I think he will, I'm sure that as part of his deal, there may be certain provisions that allow him to work for other promotions. Not a WWE or an AEW, obviously, but NWA being one of them. So I think that's what ends up happening. I predict that the Revival, for all of the stories about them holding out as they have so far, in the face of these very lucrative offers. We keep hearing about these lucrative offers being made to Dash and Dawson to stay in WWE. Over, they're being offered well over $500,000, reduced dates so they don't have to work as heavy a schedule. I don't know about Wilder, but I know, Dawson has at least one kid, and so, you think of family and less time on the road and more time with my family, and I'm making as much money as I've ever made in my life. It's a hard proposition to turn down. The latest scuttlebutt is that they want certain assurances that they're going to focus on the tag team division. They are a tag team, right? I think they both recognize that Scott Dawson is not going to go on to have some great singles career. Dash Wilder probably won't either, although I think there's less of a chance for Dawson. So yeah, of course, they want a strong tag team division because that's where they're going to be there for years if they re-sign. If I'm Dash and Dawson, and that's what I'm asking for, I don't trust a word that WWE says. They'll be like, oh yeah, sure, we're going to focus on the tag team division. And then what happens 3 months later when the tag team division sucks again? Now you're stuck in this long-term contract. So that's kind of where, as far as the rumors, that's where things seem to stand. But the belief amongst most people is that they're out. They're going to leave. They're going to go to AEW. They're going to work against the Young Bucks. I predict that will not happen. I predict the Revival are going to stay. They are going to be convinced at the 11th hour when it comes right down to it. The offer, the money, it's just going to be too much for them to reject. And I predict the Revival will re-sign with WWE just like Anderson and Gallows did last year. Meanwhile, Brody Lee, the former Luke Harper, I predict will sign with AEW once his non-compete expires at the beginning of March. Not a huge leap there, although he could wind up in New Japan. I think it's one or the other. And he also has at least one kid. He's got a family. Does he want to travel or relocate to Japan? I don't know. I don't know where his head is at. I don't know on a personal level whether or not that's something he'd be interested in. And Cody, I know, has had publicly some very kind comments to say about Harper before. He's talked openly about him. I think it's clear they would have interest in him once he officially becomes available. And if they were to talk to him, I would be surprised if he turned them down. So I think that that is his likely destination. We'll see him in AEW in the not too distant future. I predict Undisputed Era will finally leave NXT for Raw or SmackDown this year. I predict Bianca Belair will be the women's champion in 2020, but not in NXT. It'll be on Raw or SmackDown. And that is kind of, in a way, going out on a limb. I mean, they are stockpiled right now with talent in that women's division in NXT. Bianca's only one part of it. I think she's going to be the one, though, before any of them, to make the move over to either Mondays or Fridays, and she will have a championship on that show before this year is over. I predict Austin Theory will be the NXT North American champion by the end of the summer. I predict the demise of 205 Live, which has been on death's door, it seems, for a while now. They have weeks sometimes where they just outright cancel the show, sometimes without even letting the talent know. Lio Rush, went off on them for that before. I think 205 Live comes to an end, and much of the talent there will simply be absorbed into NXT, which is where the Cruiserweight Championship is now anyway. So, again, 1 foot out the door, it seems like. The title is basically an NXT title now. I think it's just a matter of time. With WWE very likely rolling out its new tiered system for the network this year, we may finally have access to Progress and ICW programming on one of the premium tiers. And I predict that before the year is over, NWA Powerrr will be airing on the WWE Network. Now, I actually hope I'm wrong about that. Again, this is not my hopes and dreams for 2020. I'm trying to make predictions here, so even the ones that some cases seem obvious, it's what I think is going to happen. I'm trying to predict the future here. I hope I'm wrong about this one. But they've acknowledged themselves, I've heard Lagana, for example, give interviews before, and they acknowledge they don't have unlimited financial resources to run without a television deal or something to sustain them in the long run. I think what they're doing now is great. I'm a fan of the show. I tune in every week to every episode of Powerrr in that studio. It's a nice throwback, but they have a nice collection of talent. They have to build on it as the year goes on. So I'm a fan of what they're doing. And I would hate to see them mess with the formula in any way. YouTube is the easiest thing in the world. Everybody has access to YouTube. So you just go on YouTube and you can watch the full show. You don't have to pay for anything. It's great. But that can't go on forever. So at some point, something's got to give. Now, any kind of deal they make would have to make sense for them. I don't know how much they're making off their AdSense on YouTube. But if they were to lose that, then WWE would have to pay them for it. They'd have to, again, make it worth their while to form some kind of a partnership here. And so they're in content acquisition mode right now. I feel like WWE is always, they're never not in content acquisition mode for the network. So I would not be so quick to shut this door on this possibility here, that we will see Powerrr on the network before this year is out. With MLW preparing to make some kind of a transformative announcement. That's what they're claiming. That's the word being thrown around. Transformative about its future. Wrestling Inc. had a report on its website this week claiming interest from Showtime in possibly working with MLW or airing an MLW show, but nothing is official. I predict MLW does land on a bigger network in 2020. I have no idea if it's Showtime or some other place, but a name network somewhere on cable. And their first big signing of the new year will be Killer Kross. Not just for that one Fightland show they have him doing next month, which he's already booked for. MLW, they recently signed Jacob Fatu to a new multi-year contract. He would have been highly sought after had he become a free agent. And they locked him up for the next few years. And apparently they will retain control now of all of his outside bookings. So he can be booked out to various independent promotions. MLW will have control over that. So he can almost be like a traveling champion for them. But he's a star of the future. He's a star now, but he's a star of the future. And I was impressed. I was surprised and impressed when I heard that he had re-signed for multiple years and they locked him up. And that tells me that MLW is being aggressive going forward as far as building their brand, locking in their key names. And now, whatever this announcement is going to be, any week now apparently, I have to assume it has to do with television unless they're being acquired by some kind of bigger company. That could mean even bigger things or even bigger resources for them going forward. I think they will do the same thing with Killer Kross, who will also end up working dates this year in New Japan, I predict. But that would give MLW a core of Jacob Fatu, Killer Kross, and I guess the other big star they have would be Filthy Tom Lawler as their 3 key stars going forward, and that's a strong core to build around. And finally here, I predict that Sonata will win the New Japan Cup, but then fall short of winning the IWGP Championship, but he will end up winning the Intercontinental title at some point this year. I predict Kota Ibushi will win the IWGP title from Tetsuya Naito later this year as well. And the finals of the G1 Climax this fall will be Okada against Will Ospreay, with Okada winning his 3rd G1 and going on to challenge Kota Ibushi for the IWGP title in a bit of role reversal from night 1 of this year's Wrestle Kingdom, but this time, next year, Okada loses and Ibushi retains at Wrestle Kingdom 15. So those are my predictions for 2020. I hopefully will have a better score when we look back on this a year from now than I did this year. Again, I got a few right, but not a great year in terms of predictions, so hopefully we'll be able to turn it around with this batch going forward. And be sure to let me know some of your predictions. You know, you have 3 to 5 key predictions in wrestling, not just WWE, that you see going forward here in 2020. You can chime in and let me know what your predictions are.